All right. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael Music, and welcome to this episode of Think and Grow Rich. What we are going to be talking about today is a summary on the chapter on imagination. So, this is the fifth step toward riches, and we're really going to dive deep into what the imagination is and I want to just start off this episode and ask you, how deep can you go when we talk about the imagination? Is there truly a limit on the imagination? My intention here today is to go over some lines that I thought really stuck out to me throughout this and just really dive deep into this principle here. I'm not going to read it in like an audible format, but I really want to go over the basics because I may put this in a course and it may just be like this is the chapter on imagination. We've been reading it for a week now. So that is that. Now, what he starts off with when he describes the imagination is he says that the imagination is the workshop. So, what does it mean that it's a workshop? He says it's a workshop wherein all plans are fashioned and created by man. So we're talking about getting rich, right? And how does imagination come into play when we're talking about the entire philosophy of Think and Grow Rich? Well, we talk about that you need a definite purpose backed by definite plans put into continuous action. So let me ask you this. We talked about in desire and in a few other chapters on what it means to have a definite major purpose. What do you truly want? And now we're going to talk about okay, so we understand that we got to take action to get to where we want to be. And we understand that we have to have a plan of where to follow, of which to follow. But how do you create the plan? Where do these plans come into play? And the truth is, it's through this faculty of the mind called the imagination. So he says that the imagination is the faculty of the mind which gives the impulse, the desire. Okay, let me repeat this. He says the impulse, the desire is given shape, form, and action through the aid of the imagination. And it is said that man can create anything which he can imagine. So that's an interesting idea because we can basically understand that there is no limit to how much you can imagine. Who's really stopping you from imagining so much? But the idea that man can create anything which he can imagine, I would love to ask you, do you believe that statement? Do you truly believe that anything the mind can conceive and believe the mind can achieve? And if you can, like you hear all of these big statements out there like that. So this is a really, really big thought that we're going to dive into with the imagination. Now, we are going to talk about two main forms of the imagination. The first is the synthetic imagination. This is where you use your old experiences, education, and I think it was plans, he said. And what you're going to do with things you already know, you're going to just rearrange them to chop up into new plans to take continuous action as you go towards your ultimate definite major purpose. So it's basically the truth is you already know what you need to do and you already have the experience within you to do it. It's just rearranging it in that certain way and creating that certain plan that will lead you to really attaining what it is that you want. Now, there's the other part of the imagination, which is the creative imagination. And just for reference, so you know what I'm talking about, you can replace the creative imagination with the sixth sense. So they're basically synonyms for one another. And he says that the faculty of the creative imagination has direct communication with infinite intelligence. It is where hunches or inspirations will be received by the mind and is the faculty that is basic of all new ideas that are handed to man. Finally, it is through this faculty that thought vibrations of the minds of others are received. So, this is all the creative imagination. You can literally use your intuition to pick up the vibrations of other people and kind of almost telepathically understand, like, okay, what's going to happen? Because the sixth sense is, let me put it this way. Have you ever been driving in a car and you notice you're veering off and you're about to get into a car accident, and all of a sudden something kicks in you and you grab the steering wheel and you veer back on the right road? Or there's some situation where it was almost a close encounter, but it's almost like something took over you and you did the right movement. This was your sixth sense coming into play. Now, we talked about the synthetic imagination and the creative imagination. So let's talk about what is like the percentage. What imagination, what part of the imagination are you going to use more than the other? Now, the truth is, most of the time, as Hill describes, you're going to be using the synthetic imagination 95% of the time. This is where you're using old experiences, education, and plans. You're essentially rearranging them, making a plan of action to get to where it is that you want, and you're doing continuous action on that plan until it is necessary to alter or make better that use of plans. So that is essentially 95% of the imagination you're going to use. And that's why I say this, to say you already know what it is to get there. It's just about doing things in that certain way. And now, when you hit that roadblock, right, life will, maybe there will be a wall, right, the terror barrier, whatever you want to call it, on your way to, on the journey to the final destination of where you want to be. When you hit that roadblock, this is where your creative imagination will come into play. And you may receive a hunch, an idea, or something that you're like, this is something I got to take action on. And this is where I got to pivot to. And it will be in that moment where you you do what you got to do. And essentially, at the end of the day, this is all a big journey. And I say that to say that this creative imagination will come into play when it is needed. Now, we talked about the two. Let's see what else really stuck out to me in this book. Okay, so he talks about, secondly, the fact that your imagination is like a muscle, right? It's pretty evident, I feel like, in this day and age, that if you're not working out, doing your exercises, then it's like, okay, it makes sense that your muscles are not going to grow. Well, if you're not exercising the faculty of your imagination, then who is to say that this faculty deserves to grow? It's going to be put into direct correlates with how much you use it to make the right plans that you need to take the action on to get to the end goal. And if you don't use it, if you're not using this imaginative faculty in the proper way that it could be used, then it's obviously going to get weak. You're going to have a limiting mindset. And remember, Napoleon Hill says that the only limitation in our life is the limits that we put on ourselves. I know that's a big idea, but let's take that for truth right now. Now he talks about your desire, and essentially your desire, for what it's worth, it may mean a lot to you. What you want may mean like the world to you, and something that you may defend and may get emotional about. But at the end of the day, the desire is nothing but a thought impulse. It has no true value until it is converted to its monetary equivalent. So he says that, what does he say? He says that transformation of the intangible impulse of desire into the tangible reality of money calls for the use of a plan or plans. So we touched up on this recently. He said these plans must be formed with the aid of the imagination and mainly with the synthetic faculty. All right, so we just talked about that. Now he says, read this entire book through, then come back to this chapter and begin at once to put your imagination to work on the building of a plan or plans for the transformation of your desire into money. So I want to pause there. Have you started writing, committing your plan to writing on the way to getting what you want? Have I started that? Have you written it down what you intend to give? Remember, all these faculties play into one another. We're essentially repeating the process in the 6 steps laid out in desire. What do you intend to give for what you intend to get? He says, detailed instructions for the building of plants have been given in almost every chapter. So, like I said, every chapter there's instructions for the building of plants, and I feel like this point has to really be emphasized. We can think and we can have wishful thinking, we can want some big things, but if we're not following a plan of action, if we're not writing down a plan and following it with continuous action, then it's just going to be left at that, which is wishful thinking. So the a lot of people may be taking action, they may be working hard, they may be being busy, but they're not taking effective action towards getting what it is that they want. And what are they lacking? They're lacking the right plan. Simply put, your plan just sucks. My plan just sucks if I don't have what it is that I want. Now, now the cool news is you can always alter your plan, but the key is like have you gotten started on creating your plan to get to where it is that you want? He says, carry out the instructions best suited to your needs, reduce your plan to writing if you have not already done so. The moment you complete this, you will have definitely given concrete form to the intangible desire. So, why does he say the importance of committing it to writing? Why is it so cool that the moment you write it down, it goes from thought impulse, which is just energy, to now it's a physical reality. It is a written down in the physical. So that just shows, okay, you just took a giant leap there. You just increased your odds by a great percentage. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but I really want to emphasize this point. I know I keep talking about the plans, the plans, the plans, but we're talking about the whole imagination here. And why does the imagination come into play? Because the imagination is used to build plans, right? There's other factors. You can't imagine yourself into action, but you can imagine plans. And then you can follow those plans with belief, like what we talked about in faith. And then that's how you will get closer and closer to where you want to be. He emphasized that you want to read this sentence once more, read it out loud very slowly. And as you do, remember the moment that you reduce the statement of your desire and the plan for its realization to writing, you have actually taken the first of a series of steps which will enable you to convert the thought into its physical counterpart. So the question becomes, how do you want to get started? What plan do you want to write down today to get started on the ultimate end, like the biggest one that you can have? Now we're talking furthermore now about nature. And this was a pretty big idea that we discussed earlier on, but if you think about how the earth and we are here right now, if you really think about it, it all started at one point as a form of energy. I'm not sure how the universe exactly started, but let's just say the Big Bang Theory happened, and all of a sudden, the Earth, the solar system, and in which we live, and all the other universes were created from this moment. So before the Big Bang Theory, or the time that the Big Bang happened, what was everything around us? What was this Earth? At that point, it was just intangible energy. So eventually, you know, years and years went by, but eventually the earth became what it is now. We became what we are now. And at the end of the day, it was the fact that it went from energy to the physical monetary equivalent. So what are we doing with our goal? We're essentially following the same steps of the laws of nature. We're turning our thoughts from intangible forms of energy into the monetary equivalent of what it is that we're thinking. So I thought that was a pretty big idea. And then furthermore, we talked about a story. There's two stories in this chapter. One story was on the story of how Coca-Cola, that great empire, was started. And it started all with an old enchanted kettle. Or I shouldn't even call it enchanted. The story is called Enchanted Kettle, but it started with this old kettle that this doctor sold to this drugstore clerk for $500. It was the drugstore clerk's entire savings that he paid for this. And he gave a slip. The doctor gave him a slip for this like secret formula or secret ingredient. And to the doctor, this ingredient or this secret formula didn't really mean much to him. It had no use value to him. But why did the drug clerk spend his entire fortune, all of his money on this single idea? Because at the time, even though it wasn't anything to the doctor, the drug clerk purchased this idea, built it into what is known today as Coca-Cola, and just think about how big of an empire that is. It's everywhere. It's in every country, I believe, or almost every country. It's definitely in every state in America and far around the world. But we're talking about ideas that are truly this big, and it's like it's cool to think because we're not thinking about small stories here. We're thinking about Coca-Cola. So that's how it started. Um, And then there was another story in there, but I won't touch up too much on it. Now, this quote I'd love to say because this was pretty cool stuff. He said, "Observe how in both stories, both knew the astounding truth that ideas can be transmuted into cash through the power of definite purpose plus definite plans." Now, I really want you to pay attention to this quote here. Hill says, "If you are one of those who believe that hard work and honesty alone will bring riches, perish the thought." Where am I? It is not true. Riches, when they come in huge quantities, are never the result of hard work. Riches come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands based upon the application of definite principles and not by chance or luck. So I really want to break down that section for you because that was a cool line that he added in there. So he's saying that if you believe that hard work and hard work alone will bring you riches, perish the thought, it is not true. Why is that the case? Obviously, we understand successful people work very hard to get the fortunes that they have, but why is hard work alone not going to bring you riches? Well, Hill says riches, when they come in huge quantities, are never the result of hard work. Riches come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands based on the application of definite principles and not by chance or luck. He says definite demands based on the application of definite principles. So, what are we studying here? We're studying definite principles. There's 13 principles in this philosophy, and imagination is one of them. So, the idea is if you can definitely demand what it is that you want, and if you can follow the principles laid out for you in Think and Grow Rich, then is it fair to say that you can get what exactly what it is that you want? You can get riches in the big quantities. So that is a really, really big idea that I thought was really cool stuff. And I really also like this idea that was stated in here. Remember, Napoleon Hill says that no fewer than 100 times has a secret been stated on these pages. And I'm not saying like each line that I underline is a secret, but this is a really good thought to think about. Hill says there's no standard price on ideas. The creator of ideas makes his own price, and if he is smart, he gets it. He says there's no standard price on ideas. What does that mean? How large of an idea can you have and how much can you sell it for? Well, the thing is, if you're definite about it, who's to say that you can't sell it for a fortune, right? Who's to put the limit on how good your ideas are? Now, obviously, there's laws to take into consideration, but we're talking about the true salesman. I feel like he says it somewhere in here, but he's saying I know he said one somewhere in the chapter that the true salesmen are salesmen who are able to sell ideas, not just merely products, right? The people that are just selling you products, knickknacks, uh, stuff like that, they're the ordinary salesmen. But if you want to become a true professional salesman, the fact that you can sell a huge vision or a huge idea, then you become the one that dictates the price that you want to receive for that. So that's a whole nother idea that I think could be worth diving deep into itself. And now, I want to leave you with one last big idea that I felt that I learned well from this chapter. He said that ideas are intangible forces, but they have more power than the physical brains that give birth to them. They have the power to live on after the brain that creates them has returned to dust. What is what does that mean? Intangible forces but have more power than the brains that create them. Well, first let's determine like how powerful is your brain, right? There's no computer out there. There's no supercomputer. There's no invention out there that has been proven to be more powerful and more intelligent than the brain that is in between your ears, right? We're talking about a really powerful machine that we're using to operate our whole bodies and whatnot. But the thing about ideas is they live on past the brain. And let me give you an example. Think about Christianity, right? Who started Christianity or whose ideas did it come from? It was Jesus Christ, right? But he passed away 2,000 years ago. And yet, a lot of his ideas still live on today. I'm not saying you have to believe in Christianity, but you do need to acknowledge the fact that his ideas spread far beyond just himself and they spread far beyond just his lifetime, right? He passed away over 2,000 years ago, and yet you can find these ideas here today. So that is how Napoleon Hill wraps up the chapter on imagination. Uh, those were just some thoughts that I liked from the book that came out of it, and I want to leave it open to you. So, what was one thing you learned? One thing you liked from the chapter on imagination? I would like you to write it down. And going back to the idea of building plans, what is the plan that you're going to create today, that you're going to commit to writing on paper so that you can actually take action and begin the process of getting to your ultimate, definite, major purpose? So I'll leave you with that. I want to thank you all for watching. This was episode 58 on imagination. And I will leave you with this until we meet again in time and space. Uh, who knows when you watch this video, but when you do, it's going to be the right time. So, with that being said, peace out. Have a great rest of your day.